Okay, so at this point, we're going to use a table to plan out our long-term plan. Now, some teachers really like to use their agenda, which is fine, that works for them, but I don't like it so much just for a couple of reasons. And the first one is, with an agenda, you have to flip back and forth through the different weeks and pages, whereas with a table, you can see everything at a glance. And we talked about in CEGEP and university, there's only 15 classes, but in high school, there's many, many more. And things move quickly. We see them for about an hour each time, several times during a week or during the term. So with a table, you can see everything at a glance and you can be more flexible. So let's get started. So we said that in our first term, we're going to see our group of Secondary 1 students about 16 or 18 times. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a column here. And these I'm just going to label the class. Okay, so I'm going to write out the numbers of times that I see my students. Again, if you don't like to model your table this way, you can do it, etc. You can do it the other way, but I like to do it this way. Okay, so we see class 1, 2, if you're using a computer, this will obviously be a lot faster. Okay, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the first line, the class number that we're seeing them in. And later on, if you want, and I highly recommend this, put the date. The second column is also important. It's the goal of the class. Okay, so this is the goal. What is it that we want to accomplish? Okay. The third one is the activities that we want to do. How are we going to accomplish that goal? I'm going to leave a much bigger space for that. We can write that in. And then we have what I like to leave room for is the evaluation. Is there any evaluation happening? And just a note to self, what do I need to prep? Because often we need to reserve materials in advance. Okay, so the next step is to look at all the classes and all the materials that I've already organized and try and figure out what do I want to do and how many classes am I going to take for it. So in our example, we talked about this being the start of the year. So in the first term, I have about 16 classes to see my group of Secondary 1s. So the first couple of classes, I'll probably do something like this. I'll probably need to have an intro course, an intro and assess. Now this is, and maybe even the second class, I want to spend a couple of classes getting to know my students. And who they are and setting class rules, that kind of thing. Okay, intro and assess. And then I can start to get into the fun stuff, so my content. And if I look at my long-term plan for the year, I know that I have a couple of things that I can do. I have an LES on horoscopes. And I'll probably spend about 6 to 8 classes on that. And I have an LES on supervillains. And again, about 6 to 8 classes on that. And finally, I said I was going to look at comic books and deconstruct those with the students, which leads quite nicely from a unit on superheroes. Okay, so let's have a look at how that falls out. So if we have our unit on horoscopes, I'm going to have horoscope here, horoscope here. Okay, just for fun, I'm going to change colors. We're going to have the supervillains. You can see I'm almost at the end of my term, which is fine because you can always carry over into the next term. In fact, a pro tip is to end your term a little before the actual calendar date, because then you can not be caught up in that end of term rush like everybody else is. Okay, so then the last one would be, I start my comic book unit before the end of term. And it kind of bleeds into the next term. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna, so now let's see how this works. So we have all of our classes like this. We have the goals for each, and we're going to plan, first of all, vertically, and then horizontally. So I talked before about the different phases of teaching. So we have our activate phase. This is where we activate prior knowledge, ask questions, get students to understand why, answer the why. Then we have our build phase. Okay, and this is where we do the modeling of different things, different skills. The I do, we do, you do that we all love. And we give them new content. We practice skills, so content and ideas. Okay, and this is where we practice a lot, practice our skills. And finally, there's the C, check phase. Checking for understanding, checking comprehension. Okay, and this is where we often do our major assessments. So the things that we think about, like tests, projects, things for the students to hand in. Okay, so this goes horizontally, this goes vertically, but also horizontally. So we can think about this. In the horoscope unit, this is we want to activate in this phase. So maybe the first class we're going to activate. In the next couple of classes, we're going to build. And then the final couple of classes, we want to leave room to C, check. So here we have our final phase of checking, and for this LES, I've planned for the students to do a little writing. So this is our competency 3, writing. And they're gonna probably write their draft, and this is probably edit and polish. Yeah. So plan and write, and edit and polish and hand in. So the evaluation here, I can already fill this in, is going to be the final draft. I like to work backwards in the planning phase. So if we have the C here, the B here, so how are we going to get them to write about a supervillain? So the end goal is that they're going to create their own description of a supervillain. So they have a class or two to think about their own supervillain. They have a class to edit and polish it up before they hand it in. But what is it that we need to teach them before they get there? So in this class, we're going to introduce the topic, activate prior knowledge. In this class, we're going to help them build understanding on things that they need to know. We'll do some reading, we'll watch a video. This is where it's always helpful to have your books ready. I'm going to use this one with the unit on supervillains. Yeah. Here. I should have it ready next time. That's okay. Here we go, our unit on supervillains. And what's really great about using an activity book is that these things are already here for you. So you can see that there's some activities planned for you to activate. There's some readings for the kids to do. So you can say in your plan, okay, in this class, we're going to build, we're going to do some reading. We're going to read, and you can put the page. Okay, in this class is more build, but this time we're going to watch a video. Okay, in this class, we're going to build again, and we're going to read something else. Okay, so you're starting to get this going. Okay, now let's look at how it works if you go horizontally. Okay, if we have the sort of general goal planned out for each one of the classes vertically, we can still follow the same pattern as we plan horizontally. So, at the start of each class, it's a good idea to activate their prior knowledge, remind them what they learned last class, then we build, and then we check their understanding before they leave. But let's just take, for example, our very first class with the students, when they first arrive in class. So what's my goal here? Well, I don't know these kids, right? So I really want to introduce myself, get to know their names, and start to check and see what they already can do in English. So how does that work? Well, typically what I might do is as they walk into class, I will give them a name tag. I'll get them to draw their name. So I'm going to call this name tag activity. They have to write down their names. They also have to write an adjective that describes them using the same letter as their first name. And then afterwards, they're going to sit with a partner. So activity 1 is name tag. Activity 2 is pair questions. And once they've done that, we'll do a square. So think, pair, square. Okay, so they will sit with their partner, ask and answer questions, then sit with another partner and introduce their partner to the other partner pairs. And this should take a good 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and including the name tag. Once they've done that, I'll get them to come back and write up a quick resume or summary and hand it in. If we have some time afterwards, then I can get them to start thinking about the kind of class rules they want to follow. Okay, so we can see that we have a little bit of our activation going on here. Activation, build, and maybe some assessing going on. So the name tag here will check and see if they can use adjectives. So I'm actually also sneaky checking. The pair work and the square work is activating competency 1. The resume is activating competency 3, and the rules we can even follow next class. So the evaluation that I'm doing, and it's formative of course, is competency 1 and competency 3, plus also a little bit of their vocab. Okay, so what do I have to prepare? I'll have to prepare the name tags, and I'll have to have probably a list of questions for them to ask and answer and some instructions. Ready to roll. And here's the pro tip. Don't write in paragraphs on your long-term plan. You can see that I only have 1 or 2 words here, and there's a reason for that. And that's because, as we've talked about before, things often go sideways in class. So if you have this beautiful plan all set out, and then the fire bell goes off, or someone arrives late, or something silly happens, which often happens in high school, right? You get disrupted. You won't be able to necessarily get everything done. But what you can do, once you've planned out, is just say, look, I did the name tags, we started the pair and square, but we didn't get around to the resume. It just didn't happen. So then you can write in here and say, here, move here. So that you know to yourself, okay, I got to do that next time with this group. On the other hand, too, if you find you have a good 20 minutes left in class, if you've planned out here in the second class to talk about, rules and democracy and how you want a class to be run, and you have your activities all planned out, you can say, hey, I'm not caught with nothing to do. I can steal from here and move it up here, and we can work ahead. So that way you have, at once, you have a set of plans that will follow the PFEQ, but also the amount of flexibility that you need in order to stay flexible as you're planning. So I haven't planned out my whole long-term plan with you because that would take us too long, but I'm hoping that this way you get a sort of sense of how it works. So first of all, we plan vertically with our goal, then we plan horizontally using our 3 phases. And that's it. Thank you.